Hey kids. So at the moment, my armpit is on that high octane bullshit. It's just leaking everywhere. And so I'm going braless for a while. I'd rather be braless, but people find my body offensive, I guess. When I went back to my parents' house, my mom was like, "Are you supposed to be wearing a bra with that?" And I was like, "Bitch, I have an autoimmune disorder, and I've had this autoimmune disorder for over a decade. I know you know that I am in excruciating pain right now, and that is why I'm not wearing a bra. Like, please, miss me forever." Yeah, my armpit's not great. At the moment, I have like this dead skin, 5 o'clock shadow, because I have retin-A, and it's kind of a skin peel. So it kills like the first couple layers of skin, and it kind of just sloughs off. So the gains are going to be dank as fuck. I'm really excited for when all my skin falls off, killing me instantly. It's going to be great. So why is it so difficult for me to update? Well, last week was stressful. We went to the movies. As you may know, Finn and movies don't go well together. As a person that experiences psychosis on a regular basis, movies, like literally being in a contained room full of other people with heavy stimuli coming from all directions, not great for a person who vacates the fucking premises sometimes. So went to the movies to see Infinity War. It was a good movie. Went to the psychiatrist before that, and Finn and mental health professionals don't get along super well. We don't. And this one was no different. Well, she was a bit different. She's probably not the worst mental health professional that I've spoken to, but maybe the second worst psychiatrist. The reason why I say this is because I came from the appointment feeling like she thought that I was lying to her, like, about everything I was saying, which is not a great way to build rapport with a client. And if you think I'm lying, then just go outright and say it. I don't know why she kind of danced around trying to get to the bottom of things when she could just ask me if I was lying. And if I'm lying, then why does it even matter? She mentioned borderline personality disorder. She mentioned that. She was making connections between things that weren't related. At the beginning, I talked about my armpit and needing surgery for that, and that's Diglett. Yeah, I talked about needing surgery for my armpit, and at the end of the appointment, I had mentioned my gender identity because I figured it would be a thing that I need to talk about because it is something that induces a lot of stress vis-a-vis my husband. And when I brought up my gender identity, she got real fucking stiff. Almost like how a lawyer interacts with a witness that they think is lying. She got very goddamn stiff and made this connection between my armpit surgery and gender affirmation surgery that I never mentioned. I never mentioned that I wanted to do anything surgical for my gender. And I'm not entirely certain why she made that connection. She was just like, why do you think you need surgery? And I was like, what are you talking about? No, the surgery I was talking about was for my armpit. And then when I was talking about the medications that I was taking before this appointment, when I started taking medication when I was like 15, she assumed that I was either lying about the medications I had been taking, or that I wasn't taking them as prescribed. And so it was just annoying. It was an annoying endeavor speaking to her, especially because I don't feel that I get my point across very well. And like, that is the epitome of feeling like I haven't gotten my point across, when you think I'm lying when I'm obviously not. It also seemed like she had already resolved what exactly was wrong with me and what exactly she was going to do before I got to the appointment, which, I mean, I have to do the like the intake stuff. It's like a whole litany of questions before I actually go see the psychiatrist. And so I realized that she has a lot of information about me, but like, pretend like you don't. Pretend like you don't necessarily know everything about me, because you fucking don't. So I ended up getting prescribed a antipsychotic, which is really, I mean, it's not necessarily what I wanted, but I wanted something for anxiety. And so a lot of the things that I experience symptomatically, they're not, you know, highly intertwined. So like some of my OCD tendencies, like pulling out all my fucking eyelashes, the delusions that I have, they're almost like systems that like have their own life to them. Hallucinations, dissociation, all those things are born of stress. And so while you can take medicine to combat individual symptoms, I know that everything that I'm experiencing is brought on by anxiety. And so kind of attacking the anxiety would probably help with any and all other things that cascade from it. And so she ended up giving me an antipsychotic and the medication that they give to people with stage fright, which that's good shit. It lowers your blood pressure. It's a beta blocker. And I guess I should talk about psychosis, because maybe you don't know. Psychosis is not necessarily violent. I know that's the connection a lot of people make. That's the connotation of psychosis, is like a person that's psychotic is fucking out of their mind and they're gonna hurt people. Like, I hate to break it to y'all, but people that are psychotic are more of a danger to themselves than they are to other people. Really, what psychosis is a disconnect from reality. That is like the bare bones definition of it. And so dissociation is a big one for me, where I'm just gone. Things just feel unfamiliar. The world feels unfamiliar. And so it's a thing that a lot of people experience. A big one that isn't necessarily born of any mental illness is liminal spaces. It feels like almost like you're in between dimensions somewhere. You're in the conduit between dimensions. And often liminal spaces are places that are in between places. So being in the walking into an airport, hallways, staircases. It's just unfamiliarity intertwined with familiarity, and your mind trying to process those two things together. So yeah, dissociation is a big one for me, even though it hasn't been a huge problem recently. It is a problem. Hearing voices, since I was a pretty little kid, I've been hallucinating. The earliest hallucination I can remember is when I was 8 years old, and I would have this feeling that I was rolling something in between my index finger and my thumb. And it felt like that's absolutely what's happening. If I look down on my hand, that is what's going to be happening, and it wasn't. It never is. I'm never doing that. That is a tactile hallucination that I remember pretty distinctly, and it comes along with this weird metallic-y smell that I'm pretty aware isn't actually happening. The problem with psychosis is when the person who is psychotic is unable to differentiate reality from the perceptions, the delusions, the hallucinations, the weird shit that's going on in your head. That's when you run into issues. But for the most part, for me, I mean, I recognize it because there's a certain feeling that you have with it. It's probably different for everyone else, but for me, there's a certain, it just feels, I feel in my head, it just feels a certain way. And the first few times it happens, you don't really recognize it, but when it keeps happening, you kind of build a pattern, a map of how the experience feels in your head. And so when I talk about hearing voices, the doctors, they always, they latch onto that. But the dissociation is really a lot more of a problem for me. Voices are just kind of distracting. But the things that they'll ask is, do you hear them in your head or do you hear them outside your head? And I typically hear them in my head. I do hear weird tinny sounds, clattering sounds outside my head. But again, I have built this map of how it feels whenever I hear it. And so I know other people aren't hearing it. Doctors will also ask, let's see, are they voices that you recognize? For me, they're not. I've come to recognize them, but they're not voices that belong to people that I know. I know at least one of them is a black woman. And they'll ask, do they talk to you? Mine don't talk to me. They talk to each other about me, if there's multiple, and I have multiple. Whether or not they say bad things or funny things or sad things or tell you what to do, can you understand what they're saying? Is it just, incoherencies? Hallucinations are just different from person to person. But whenever I see a mental health professional, they're very, very interested in how I experience hallucinations. They want to get to the bottom of it, which I don't know what information they glean from it, but I get the same questions often. So yeah, anyway, went off on a tangent there. My experience with my new psychiatrist wasn't great, but I did get medication that will help with some of the experiences, some of the psychosis, the anxiety, and panic attacks. So I'm pretty golden at the moment. So I'm pretty used to taking antipsychotics. I've taken them since I was, 16, 15? They probably started me, they started me on Prozac and then they moved to antipsychotics pretty quick. But yeah, I've been taking them for a while. And so there's a bunch that I've taken and they just aren't necessarily all that helpful. What an antipsychotic is a major tranquilizer. It's meant to instill this feeling of contentment. Like you are absolutely content. What it tends to do to me is makes me manic. So yesterday I went out and ran some errands because I needed to go. I needed to fucking go. I had to, and I was really restless. It seems like what it does for me is it kind of checks the anxiety because I'm just in a constant state of like butthole clenching anxiety at all times. What it does is kind of take the edge off the anxiety and kind of divert this river of just stress and freaking the fuck out anxiety that I have and switches it almost like the train tracks getting switches it over to restlessness, which is like pre-anxiety for me. It's not really aligned with feeling particularly bad or good. Anxiety is bad shit because you're just clenched in all sphincters, all places. You are just on high alert. With restlessness, I just feel like I need to do things. And feeling like I need to do things isn't really bad. Eventually, if I don't do anything, it can turn bad, but I just do things. It's really easy. And yesterday I actually made a video. It It's pretty bad. I was all over the place because I was manic. But today it's, I don't know, pretty evened out. I kind of feel like the same way I felt before I started taking the medicine. And I think it was just because yesterday was just really, it was tiring to be all over the place like that. But I don't feel particularly bad. So that's, I don't know. I don't know about the medicine really. I just take it because I don't know what else to do. And it does bring down the psychosis, where delusions, hallucinations, and dissociation, there are things that aren't like in the forefront. But yeah, they tend to just make me manic. They kind of affect my impulse control. I'll do and say weird shit sometimes. So I'm not necessarily like real into the idea of taking antipsychotics, but I'm doing something, so, you know. So far, the experience with the psychiatrist was objectively terrible. And the experience with the medication is, for the anxiety medication, that's 10 out of 10. For the antipsychotics, it's a solid 6 out of 10. Because it does affect the levels of anxiety I'm experiencing, so that's good. But it kind of makes me bounce off the walls a bit. So we'll see how things unfold into the future. I'm definitely going to see a different psychiatrist, I can tell you that much. But don't know about medications. What a wacky fucking ride. It's been wild, y'all.